part of an ongoing series called the Investment and Finance Series, which was originally started by John Merrill, class of 92, and Brian Chippinelli, class of 92. It's an ongoing series. We try and do at least one a year, and sometimes two. And we're happy to have David Edwards, who's a class of 83, Hamilton grad, up here tonight to continue that tradition. David is going to talk about wealth management as the topic tonight. David, in addition to being a Hamilton alum, has a varied career, which he'll talk about, but he currently, and started, 21 years ago, started up a wealth advisory firm, Heron Financial Group, and David is president and founder. So I'm going to hand it off to David to speak to you guys tonight. David's going to talk for about 30 minutes, and then after that we'll open it up to Q&A, and for those that you want to hang around, both myself and David have some time after the formal presentation, which will end about 8 o'clock. All right, thank you. I'll hand it off.
Alrighty, so I am David Edwards, Hamilton College class of 1983. And about 30 years ago, I was kind of in the same situation as you guys right now, trying to get a job after college. And I'll tell you, I thought I was in great shape, because I had 3 amazing summers at JP Morgan Bank in Belgium, of all places, filling in for employees that were gone for the summer. So I actually had a pretty responsible position. I was in constant contact on the phone with clients all over the world, New York, the Middle East, Africa, Asia. And I thought I was the cat's pajamas. But when I graduated, when I was getting to the end of my senior year in 1983, it was in the midst of a terrible recession. And it was very hard getting a job of any kind that year. And I thought I had a great track record at JP Morgan Bank in Brussels. But I did not know that the headquarters in New York didn't know very much about Belgium and didn't really care that I had worked in Belgium and disregarded all that experience. So I didn't get a job at JP Morgan after I graduated from Hamilton in 1983. I didn't get a job at the other 15 banks I applied to either. So when I graduated, I went back home with no job at all. And I spent that first summer living at home with 2 pissed off parents, tutoring, bartending, taking classes at Columbia in accounting and finance and computer science to stall for time. And what I learned from that experience is the thing that will harm you the most in this whole job-seeking process that you're going through is what I call the things that you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. I was having dinner with a group of 8 people earlier tonight, and I asked them the question, hey guys, what happened in the financial markets in January? Does anybody have a memory of that at all? Nothing, right? You?
Yeah, the markets, they didn't crash, but they went down. They were way off their highs. There was about like 5% down.
Yeah, and do you recall what triggered that?
Well, the weather, but mostly just people were freaking out.
Yeah, people were freaking out. Do you recall why they were freaking out?
Interest rates going up.
Yeah. You know, so we have an industrial military complex called CNBC and Fox Business News, and they're in the business of attracting eyeballs for advertisers. To attract eyeballs, you got to scare people, right? If CNBC says, "Hey, everything's fine," great, you're going to change the channel and go to something else. But if CNBC says, "The emerging markets are cratering. It's time to sell your stocks. Dive, dive, dive," people will overreact. And you know, I don't watch CNBC. I could care less what happens on that channel. But by the end of January, I was aware that they must be saying something because I was getting inquiries from my clients on email. They say the Turkey's going to implode. What are we going to do about that? You know, you asked about Ukraine, right? Well, what's our take on Ukraine? Well, you got a 2nd level nation, Russia beating up on a 3rd level nation, Ukraine. We don't care at all. It's a humanitarian crisis. It's not an economic crisis. It's going to have no impact whatsoever on McDonald's earnings or General Electric earnings or indeed anyone's earnings. Actually, what is interesting is that Russia has sort of shot itself in the foot because their stock market is down about 15%, 20% on the year. That's a $60 billion hit. That's kind of painful. To grab some land? Huh. Think that through. Right, so I did not know that my experience at JP Morgan for 3 straight summers was of little value in New York City. So by the time I started interviewing again that fall, I was a lot better at it. And you know, how can you fix the knowledge gap that you have now? Well, interview as many alumni as you can reach. So Mary and Katie, that's their expertise, right? I've been an alumni resource for 30 years now for Hamilton, for my business school for 20 years. But when you're going to interview them, you got to be prepared, all right? If I spend a half hour with you or 45 minutes with you, that's 45 minutes out of my gym schedule, or 45 minutes out of my work schedule, or 45 minutes out of my sitting around doing nothing schedule, all right? So make sure that the time you spend with me is valuable. The young lady from the lacrosse team is right here. Okay, so this young lady called me about a month ago. Good resume, well prepared, and I immediately saw things about her that told me she would be on the right track. She's the captain of the lacrosse team. That's a stress position. She's got a campus job. She's got a high GPA. That tells me in 15 seconds that she's a team player, she can handle stress, and she's good at time management. That will get her at least a first interview with any bank you apply to, okay? I had another interview a couple weeks later with a young man who was not as well prepared. Seemed more like a dilettante than a focused individual. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. Okay, so when you get to that alumni, make sure that it's a good experience for you, and it's a good experience for them. One thing you can do to speed the process is look up their LinkedIn profile. Anybody who's a professional lives and dies on LinkedIn these days. If I get an inquiry from a prospect, I go to their LinkedIn profile straight away. I also check out their Facebook page. I also check out their wedding announcements, right? I also see what I can find about them in the news, right? I want to know as much as I can about that person before we ever come in contact. Partly, I'm trying to qualify them, right? Are they a good prospect for us? Are they a good fit for us? But also, I'm looking for points of commonality. Hey, you went to Williams? My brother went to Williams, right? Or, hey, you have a ski house in Aspen? I just got back from Malta, you know? I'm trying to create points of commonality so that they feel like they know me, and I get to know them better. And there's no better time to start that process than right now when you're talking to alumni, right? My LinkedIn profile's out there, my Facebook page is out there, my Pro page is out there, my Twitter feed is out there, my YouTube channel is out there, right? You should look at all of that before you call me. Have good questions, right? This is a great question. How did Hamilton prepare you for your career? We love that one, right? Ask questions like that. Be current. I know you guys have classes, I know you have exams, I know you've got a lot of time pressures, whatever. But at the minimum, read The Economist, Forbes, comes that bi-weekly, and then this is what I do. I have New York Times on my cell phone, and when I'm in the subway, I read the top news and the top 10 most emailed. And so I know 90% of what's going on no matter what's happening, right? This filtering process of the most emailed tells me what's important to other people, therefore it's important to me. And have an opinion on something. This gentleman over here has an opinion about he wants to be in the futures market. Have an opinion about interest rates. Have an opinion about gold, housing prices. It doesn't matter if you're wrong. Just have an opinion. You know. So, for example, who has an opinion on gold? Someone hold a hand. Gold.
I think it's going down.
Okay. Why?
I think that the market in the United States is going up, and that makes everybody around the world feel more secure. So it makes us be able to pay our debt. Right. And so therefore bonds are going to go up, gold's going to go down. Right. So you could actually refine that explanation a little bit and say, the world's, aside from Ukraine, the world situation is actually pretty stable. Gold is often a psychological instrument. It's a flight safety instrument. Hey, the world's in pretty good shape right now. That takes away the psychological demand for gold. Meanwhile, in India, that economy has slowed down a little bit, and Indians in particular demand gold for jewelry. So there's less demand there. Gold is also an industrial component, but hey, China's a little slow right now. If you could give an explanation like that in an interview, oh my God, you'd be ahead of everybody else in the room, right? So try and start thinking those complex linkages through. Anybody have an opinion on Bitcoin? Bitcoin.
Recently, one of the biggest exchanges for Bitcoin, Mt. Gox, failed miserably through hackers. and more hackers have been getting into other exchanges.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of instability.
Mhm.
But then again, executives from Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan have been funding this new startup
Mhm.
and Coinbase, which are gaining a lot of traction on Wall Street, at least it seems.
Okay, so what do you conclude about the long-term direction in Bitcoin, up or down?
Ooh. Up if the current investment from Wall Street goes into it.
Okay, I mean, just so you know my take, I'm kind of neutral on Bitcoin. If ever there was a facility for promoting terrorism, money laundering, drugs, white slavery, it's Bitcoin. And I would never allow one of my clients to be involved with that, ever, ever, ever. But hey, I'm willing to let someone else take the risk, right? When Mt. Gox failed, people lost $400 million of real money. Ooh, that's pretty painful. I'd be really loath to be involved with that. But have an opinion. Nothing, even if you're wrong, have an opinion. No matter what you think your job is, ultimately it's sales. You know the expression, if you build a better mousetrap, the world beats past your door? No. No, they are so bombarded with media and texts and ads and more texts and Tinder, and they've got so many distractions, right? Unless you have a great way of selling your idea, it doesn't matter. And this is, if you have a great idea, whoops. If you have a great idea and you can't sell it to your boss, your capital committee, or your client, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, your career looks like this. You've got a great idea and you can sell it, that generates revenue. Once you get revenue, you get profits. Once you get profits, your compensation goes up, right? You don't get paid for effort. You don't get paid for good intentions. You only get paid for profits. And then another corollary of that is, wherever you end up in your career, try and be in a profit center, not a cost center. Let me give you an example of that. You could be the best HR person in the world at JP Morgan Bank, and you will always be in a cost center, and you will never get the income you deserve. If you're an HR person at Hedrick and Struggles, which is an executive recruiting firm, you are now in a profit center, and you will always get paid for the work that you're doing. So, let's say you have a choice between working in operations at JP Morgan Bank or working in sales and trading in a much smaller firm and a much lower pay. Take that profit center job over that cost center job. Because once you get tracked into a cost center world, operations, treasury, HR, it's very hard to get into the profit side. Life is an elevator pitch. Who knows what an elevator pitch is?
It's like a short conversation. Say if you meet somebody important at the elevator, they're trying to sell your idea in 2 minutes, and
Yep.
you are not trying to complain a problem. You're trying to give all the key points, and it's like a sales pitch, but really short.
Yeah. So an elevator pitch is a very short introduction to yourself that takes place between the 2nd and the 10th floor, or the 10th and the 30th floor. An elevator pitch can be 10 seconds long. It can be 30 seconds long. It can be a minute, 30 seconds long. I practice multiple elevator pitches, and I train my staff on multiple elevator pitches. Let me give some examples. Oh, and by the way, I know that Hamilton, people don't recruit here like they used to. I know that most of your initial interviews are going to be on Skype or just getting down to New York somehow. The one spot where Hamilton students have a nice edge is that most of your classes oblige you to speak and write, and speak and write, and speak and write. And you get out into the real world, there are plenty of people who can't do either, and that's where your edge is. I'm going to do a couple of examples of elevator pitches. I'll give you an example of a bad elevator pitch. Hey Dave, what do you do for a living? I'm a wealth advisor. Oh, what is that? Nobody knows. Hey Dave, what do you do for a living? I take care of the financial lives of 90 families. Really? Tell me more. All right? It's the exact same thing, but instead of being about me, I'm a wealth advisor, it's about you, what I can do for you. Right? I can take care of your financial life. Wouldn't that be important to you? I think you might want to know more about it. Okay? So that was an elevator pitch that took about 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Here's a 45-second elevator pitch. Dave, what kind of clients do you like to work with? We work with time-stressed executives with between $1 million and $10 million in investable assets who just want their problem solved. We take care of their investments, their life insurance, their financial plan, their kids' college tuition, their estate plan, their purchase of a second home, their divorce plan. That's what we do. That's a 45-second pitch. I'm going to skip over and come back to this. This is, in the previous slide, I mentioned how important it is to simplify and clarify complex concepts for busy people. So I used to spend 30 minutes using words to explain how we could deliver someone's retirement income for the rest of their lives. And after 30 minutes, they would still be staring blankly. They wouldn't understand what I was talking about. So I hired an artist, and I said, I want you to draw a picture for me, a little bit of a allegory. And then I can say to somebody, we're going to take 60 or 70% of your assets and put it in the risk bucket. That's going to be U.S. stocks, international stocks, commodities, things that are highly volatile but have high rates of return. A couple of times a year, we're going to pour the excess over into your bond bucket. Lower return, lower volatility. The excess of that is going to flow into your cash bucket. Almost no return, but almost no volatility. And by the way, once a month, we're going to pay you the exact same amount of money. And by the way, for our clients that are retired already and are depending on their portfolios during their retirement, they got the exact same cash flow every single month through the entire financial crisis. And now that the crisis is over, their portfolios are at record levels. Are you interested in learning more about this? Yes! So that took me, a minute 30 or so. And by the way, I have this illustration on my phone. So I can give this presentation in any airport departure lounge, bar, ski lift, right? I'm always prepared to give this little presentation. Let's just go back to this page for a second. Simplify and clarify. Very important. Everybody is bombarded with information. They just want to know, out of the 10,000 choices I have, which are the 10 that matter to me? Can you show me the best 3? That's what we sell all day long. Always be prepared to answer the question, what can you do for me? We're in a very egocentric world. Have you noticed? MySpace, YouTube, right? Everything is me, 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 okay? So when you're talking to a potential employer, what can you do for them today? When you're talking to a potential client, what can you do for them today? It's all about them, very little bit about us. Lastly, I make people practice their elevator pitch in front of me, in front of the mirror, in front of their smartphone, right? Practice it, practice it, practice it, write it out. Can you get down to 10 words instead of 15? Can you do it in 10 seconds, and 15 seconds instead of 10? Right? Practice, practice, practice. Plot your career path. I know it's hard to believe right now because you're just trying to get that first step on the ladder, right? But in fact, there will be multiple times over the rest of your career, the next 35 or 40 years, where you'll have to pause and reflect and think about what you're going to do next. For example, for many of you, after 5 years, you'll pause and think about, is now the right time for me to go to business school? Or is now the right time for me to quit this job and go to a startup? Or is now the right time for me to quit this job and start a family? All right? It should not happen as a surprise. It should be thought out a little bit. I spent my first 4 years at Morgan Stanley working initially in systems and then in new products. And after 4 years, I paused and reflected and considered that I was working 100 hours a week, Monday through Saturday, half day on Sunday. And that in a few years, I would be a managing director making about $2 million a year, which was a lot of money in 1985. But I would also be a divorced cokehead, and I didn't want that lifestyle. So I quit that job, went traveling for half a year, came back, and worked as a consultant for the next 4 years at JP Morgan Securities and Nomura Securities, going back and forth, developing trading products for those firms. And after 4 years, I came to the next crossroad. Do I want to stay on the consultant side and hire more consultants to work for me, or do I want to take my money management skills and open an investment firm? And I thought that'd be the more interesting path, but I realized I was missing key skills in marketing and operations. So I dug into business school for 2 years to get those skills and write the business plan for my company and started up right after I graduated. I threw up a link there. This PowerPoint will be up on the Career Center website. Fidelity has a very nice chart of different career paths within their business. Right? Everything from wealth management to sales and trading to treasury. Check that out. Training programs. I was initially in the systems training program at Morgan Stanley. As soon as I completed that, I jumped right into the capital markets training program. So I would work 8 hours a day at my job, 4 hours at night taking these programs. And as soon as that was done, I took every management class that Morgan Stanley would offer. And when I was working as a consultant, after work, I would take classes at the New York Institute of Finance. Learning. What else can I learn? JP Morgan has a nice description of training programs at their organization. Find those training programs at other banks. Find them at insurance companies. One way that people can work into wealth management is through life insurance. MetLife has a pretty good training program. Check it out. Credentials and advanced degrees. We talked about an MBA. A CFA is a Chartered Financial Analyst degree. It takes 3 years. Generally speaking, you take level 1, your first year of business school, level 2, your second year of business school, level 3 after you graduate. CFP, Certified Financial Planner, right? There's many designations in that space. CFP is the one that's most common and most respected. CLU, Chartered Life Underwriter. That's if you're a life insurance expert. CIMA, Certified Investment Management Analyst. That's for people that work with high net worth families, $2 million and up. An MBA, of course, at JD, Trusted Estate Law. A PhD, not uncommon. The link there lists the other 21 possible designations you can get in this space and how you get there. And it's worth checking it out to start thinking, how does that factor into my career path? Sponsors and mentors. For every 10 people that call me for career advice, one person gets back to me 6 months later and tells me how things are going. And then 6 months later after that. Those people get my attention. I mentor them. Sponsor might be somebody at your firm who makes sure you get into the right training programs, frees up your time to make it possible to get management training, right? You need to find these people and help them along. Mary and I were talking last night about one young lady who's probably gone to an extreme. She has about 25 sponsors and mentors. And those mentors are getting her out of a shitty industrial town in China to Wall Street, right? She's a long way to go, but she's working there. Your education never stops. I'm 52 years old. Every day I ask myself, what have I learned today? How fun is that? I'm never bored. No divisions of the industry cold. All right? Again, it's very hard where you are right now at Hamilton College in the midst of midterms to spend time figuring all this stuff out. But it matters an awful lot. Okay? So for example, I live and breathe this stuff all day long, and I don't really want to explain it to somebody who's coming to me for information. I want you to find this out before you get to me. All right? So here are the divisions. Registered investment advisor. That's the kind of firm that we are. We are fiduciaries. We answer to a higher authority, the SEC. Our industry is taking away market share from broker-dealers. Those are firms like Merrill Lynch, Credit Suisse, Goldman Sachs, U.S. Trust. They adhere to the suitability standard. They are regulated by FINRA. They are we think we're here, we think they're down there. They feel the other way around. The average American has no idea of this distinction because there's so many terms that are used to describe what I do, right? We hold ourselves out as wealth advisors. But we make investments for our clients. We tell them about life insurance. We tell them about estate planning. We tell them how to manage their divorce. We're covering a lot of other hats. Other people may only be stockbrokers. When I sat in this presentation 30 years ago, there was a guy who came up and explained how he got to his first day of work, and they gave him a phone book to farmers in Ohio and a phone, and that was his job, was to make cold calls. That doesn't really exist anymore. But there are people that are stockbrokers. They now call themselves more likely something like a financial consultant, right? Merrill Lynch calls them financial consultants. There are some people that only do financial planning, they don't sell investments. Others do financial planning and sell investments and sell insurance, all right? So all these terms, you need to figure it out in the next few months, get a good sense of what these things mean. And to help you, there are a number of brochures that are online that explain the differences. If you know the differences before you come into an interview, you are head and shoulders above everybody else, because most people have not done their homework. You have to do your homework. Let's talk about the fun stuff for a second. You're going through a process of elimination. So we'll take a little break here. There was a show back in the late 70s called The Gong Show. Mary and Katie are familiar with it. You guys are not. This was as popular back then as American Idol is now. So I want you to take a look at this and just see how lame it is.
I don't know why
I don't know
Dick
why either.
did that rascal. You were in the middle of your little crescendo.
This was American Idol back in the 1970s. All right? So when I went through this process, when I counsel other people to go through this process, I talk about, if I can get back to the, yeah, here we go. Talk about surviving the Gong process. JP Morgan Bank, Goldman Sachs, Fidelity will get 1,000 resumes. They will discard 900 right off the bat. You don't have the right GPA, you didn't go to our list of schools, right? When I was at Morgan Stanley, we used SATs to screen resumes. Back then there was only math and verbal, combined score was 1,600, was the perfect score. Anybody with less than 1,300 we cut before they even got past the first screen. Does that make any sense? No, but we had to figure out how to get a handle on this fire hose of resumes. Out of that comes 100 phone interviews or Skype interviews. Out of that, 10 people get invited to come down to New York for a face-to-face meeting with actual people. Out of that, 5 will make it to the final rounds, people get job offers. It's a pretty harsh mortality, right? Your mission is to avoid getting gonged anywhere along the way. And this is where people trip. A perfect resume. In my era, we had to type resumes. There was no word processing. And if you made a mistake, you had to rip it out and start it all over again. Can you imagine how much fun that was? Appropriate business attire. Everybody has to borrow $1,000 from their parents and buy one really nice suit with a really nice shirt, really nice shoes, and a really nice tie. My motto is, if you want someone to give you $1 million, you have to look like $1 million. We have a budget at my firm so that I can upgrade the wardrobes of people who work for me. I want them to look good, and it's expensive. Positive attitude. Oh my God, you're gonna get rejection, rejection, rejection. It's like being an actor or an actress. Audition, 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 always have to have a positive attitude no matter what. Never whine, ever, ever, ever. Demonstrate accomplishment, team focus, time management. Whatever you've done in Hamilton, try and push that to the top of your resume and put it in your cover letter. I was the captain of the lacrosse team. I held down a job, what was your job there?
Music library.
Musical library, and I had a GPA of 3.8 or whatever. Make sure that people know that, because that's your whole life. Handle stress questions. Anybody have a stress interview yet? This was my stress interview. So actually with the Hamilton alumni, at the end of a long day, on the trading floor at Salomon Brothers in 1983. Dave, there's nothing on this resume of value to me whatsoever. Why am I even talking to you? And that was the end of my interview. I had nothing to say. I like, all right. So when I got back to my next round of interviews at Morgan Stanley, 6 months later, I was much better prepared for those kind of situations. The guy looked at me, looked at my resume, looked at me, and said, Dave, you're applying for a systems job at an investment bank, but your resume says you're a history and math major. How's that going to work? I said, well, When you study history, you learn about the big picture. When you study math, you develop a quantitative toolbox. Hopefully you can quantify the big picture and make some money. The guy goes, if you can sell that to a client, you're our guy. Which takes me back to my first point. No matter what you think you're doing, you're in sales. At that instant, I was selling myself. Later on, I was selling ideas to my management. I was 24 years old. I went to a meeting with Bob Diamond, who's the managing director at Morgan Stanley, later became the chairman of Barclays Bank. So very important guy. He was 35, I was 24. He said, Dave, we want to be in the CMO business. Make it happen. I said, well, I can spell CMO. Other than that, what the hell is it? He goes, we don't know. Go find out. And I did. I went to the Morgan Stanley corporate library and clawed through trade magazines until I found out what CMOs were. And from there, we built a business. All right? So stress questions will come up often. Preparation. Who here has had the classic question, why is the manhole cover round? Anybody? Guess. Why is the manhole cover round?
If it's square, wouldn't it be able to like fall into the gap?
That's one answer. Are there other answers?
Probably.
Okay. There's like six. Anybody else? Give me some more ideas. Can you roll a square manhole cover? No, but you can roll around one, right? It's if you're trying to get into it, it's easier to get in and get out, right? Google was famous for having ridiculous stress questions. How would you calculate how many golf balls can fit inside a school bus, right? Or how would you estimate how many gas stations in America? And they want to see you squirm. I asked a stress question that I thought was actually not too stressful. I would say, hey, you know what? We've been talking for 15 minutes now. I'm getting a good sense about you. I just want you to pause for 1 minute and think carefully about a time when you had a problem to solve. And I don't care if it's schoolwork or a job or whatever. Take a minute, think about it, describe that problem to me, and then describe how you solved it. And I'm just going to make some notes. Do you have any idea how uncomfortable silence is? And I would learn a lot from how that person reacted. Did they start to get flustered? Or alternatively, did they come back with a really rip-roaring explanation about the time that they were driving their car and tires blew out, they had no money, but luckily they were able to, whatever. Somebody explained to me that they didn't panic, they were able to work it through. There are a number of books, I happened to look with Katie today, in the library about smart answers to interview questions. This book here is written by a friend of mine. I think it's pretty good. You owe it to yourself to read through these books and do some mock interview practice and kind of get over the fear factor thing. Anyone see Top Gun back in the day? Right, Top Gun, right? The plot of Top Gun is Tom Cruise goes to Naval Aviator School and wherever it is, out in California, whatever, to do 20 or 30 or 100 simulated battles before he ever gets in contact with the real enemy. That's what you got to do with your interview preparation. You got to do 20, 30 simulated interviews with your parents, or your parents' friends, or with Katie, or with each other, or me. Lastly, fun of the movies. Wall Street is an incredibly boring subject to film. How many movies have been set in legal courtrooms? Hundreds. How many movies have been set on Wall Street? 20 or 30 that I can think of which 15 are any good. But take some time as you're traveling around, jump on Netflix or jump on Pirate Bay or whatever, and take a look at some of these movies. Wolf of Wall Street, who's seen that yet? Okay. There was a lot of outrageous drug abuse and ridiculous sex in there, which is only a little bit more exaggerated than I remember from the 80s. But do you remember the scene where he ends up in that crappy little strip mall somewhere out in Long Island, and he's got his beautiful suit on, and he walks in, and everyone's wearing, chinos and sneakers, and it's very sad, whatever. And he knows he has no choice. He's got to figure this out, and he starts writing scripts, and he teaches the other brokers how to use these scripts to pitch to unfortunate, rubes all over the planet. Okay, I'm not suggesting that you defraud people, What I am suggesting is that you think about scripting, right? Everything that I've said to you this evening, I've said 100 times already. And I've tested the words, right? We used to talk about delivering a client's monthly allowance from our 3-bucket retirement strategy. And I changed that word to draw, because allowance means a kid, draw means an adult. So scripting matters. Go back and just watch that one scene where he's teaching people how to script. Boiler Room, earlier movie, same subject, more serious, is with Ben Affleck and Vin Diesel, also worth watching. Margin Call, gripping drama of value at risk models. Anybody know what a value at risk model is? Value at risk models were designed by the smartest brains on Wall Street, PhDs in economics, statistics, finance, physics, to try and establish how much money a bank could potentially lose on a given day and suggest hedging strategies. These models failed spectacularly during the financial crisis. They were worth nothing. They actually led people into the slaughterhouse. Okay? And Margin Call is a movie about value risk models, worth watching. Trading Places, I mentioned that before. It's very funny. It's very dated at this point. It was filmed in 1983. But it's worth watching just for a couple scenes where they're explaining to Eddie Murphy how the commodities markets work. Worth watching. Too Big to Fail and Inside Job. So right now, the SEC has effectively prosecuted a number of people for insider trading in the range of tens of millions of dollars. In the last decade, American banks stole billions and billions and billions of dollars from average Americans and have never been prosecuted for it because nobody could figure out how it was done. These 2 movies kind of tell you the story. Working Girl. Staten Island girl reinvents herself as an investment banker. Melanie Griffith and Alec Baldwin when he was still very skinny. Mary knows that movie. But it's fun to see how hard she works in order to make herself be successful in that world. She's from Staten Island. She has a bad accent. She takes accent reduction classes. Lucas in my office is from Ghana. He has a very strong accent. I sent him to accent reduction classes. Right? Clothing. Table manners. I gave everybody in my office a book called How to Look Like a Millionaire Without Actually Being One. The original Wall Street movie was kind of entertaining. Insider trading and leveraged buyouts. A lot of movies, other people's money, but right at the gate. The second Wall Street movie was terrible. Don't waste your time with that. More ideas from the CFA Institute. All right. So I've gone over 7 takeaways, and the PowerPoint will be available. You can do some follow-up research. We don't have time to nail every single element on here, but you owe it to yourself to follow up with these takeaways, research the topics that are introduced, do your homework, and then you'll be properly prepared so that you don't waste your first 4 interviews getting gonged before you even get started. Questions? Sure.
Are there any striking differences in personality or skills if you look at people who consider wealth management as a part as compared to people who consider maybe sales or trading or investment banking?
Yep. I have client-facing employees and spreadsheet-facing employees. I have some employees that are very good with social interaction. Danielle in my office, her mission is to go out to conferences 4 nights a week, look through the room, identify executives who should work with us, get their business card, and introduce them to me. She is a client-facing employee. Lucas is my portfolio manager, and he does a lot of financial plans. I doubt he will ever meet a client. He's really a digit head. He's very focused. When I was going through this process 30 years ago, one of the alumni made the observation that if you're very good at taking tests, you might be cut out to be a trader. If you're very good at doing essays, you might be cut out to be an investment banker. An investment banker has all weekend to get it right. A trader has to make a decision right now. I have noticed that people that like games, backgammon, bridge, poker, right, tend to be better traders. They're very adept at measuring risk and reward. Who here plays backgammon? Okay, so backgammon is a really boring game, right? Slightly more interesting than checkers. Until you bring the doubling cube in. Why?
Sorry, what?
until you bring the doubling cube in. Why?
Oh, I actually don't know that, right?
Okay, so in backgammon, pretty much statistically speaking, two good players ought to come to a draw every single time. But they start employing the doubling cube. Hey, I'm a bit ahead here. I'll offer you a double. If you accept that double, then the game's now worth 2 points. Or you might forfeit and move on to the next game. Right? Or you accept the double, but now things have changed. You offer me the double back. Now it's worth 4 points. So by trying to get an edge and then provoking a decision by the other person with that doubling cube, that's what distinguishes an expert backgammon player from an average backgammon player. And it's the same ability to get an edge in trading that distinguishes a good trader from an average trader. Now, you can't go over the line, right? There's a company, SAC in Greenwich, Connecticut, where they obtained their edge by simply stealing information, getting insider information. And 8 of their portfolio managers have gone to jail. Questions? Here's a good question. Dave, what do you like best about your job? If you're a criminal defense attorney, you see people oftentimes at the worst moments of their life. What's your name? James. James, I'm sorry, the judge is giving you 10 years. Or if you're, let's say, an oncologist, you deal with cancer. You might see people at the worst moments of their life. What's your name? Catherine. Catherine, I'm sorry, you only have 6 months to live. Okay. I get to be with people at the best moments of their lives, when they retire, when they put their grandchild through college, when they build that second home. I'm going to Alaska this summer to visit a home that my Houston clients built with money they got from me. I'm going to be in London, Amsterdam, and Luxembourg later this June, meeting with clients, just talking about how great things are going. How lucky is that? That's why I like my job. So let's cut the formal part here, and I'll be around for a bit longer. Thank you.
Here.